Tony Stewart, obviously, in the building. He was in the sprint car for a couple nights here at the dirt track, was over doing a little demonstration one for his counterparts at Haas F1 team, and now overseeing the Xfinity Series teams and the Cup teams of Stewart Haas Racing. Just a general media availability, so if you can, raise your hand, state your name and affiliation, and we'll make sure you can ask a question to Smoke. Yep. Wolfgang back here. Of course, yes.
The second one cost you.
Tony, just a few days earlier, you made demo laps in Austin, Texas with a stock car. How was the attendance from the established Formula One teams? Did you have a chance to talk maybe to Vettel or to Hamilton? And the second question, yesterday during a press conference, maybe all drivers or nearly all drivers in F1 complained there's a very extremely bumps in Austin. How did you feel it in the stock car, the bumps at the racetrack?
Well, I can remember that one, so I'll leave that one for last. You know, it was pretty cool because anytime you take a race car to a venue or with a series that's never seen anything like that, it draws a lot of attention. And, you know, this was, I guess, chapter 2 of what we did last year with Kevin Magnussen in North Carolina. We took our sprint car, and they did a Netflix special with Kevin, and so we taught him how to drive the wing sprint car. So he did really good with that. So the guys at SHR built a 2-seat road course car that we took to Austin, obviously, and made a couple laps. It was fun. I mean, the track I thought was a lot of fun to drive, but to watch Kevin and Ramon get in there and make their laps, the smile on their faces was probably the best part of it. But the one part that I absolutely looked at both of them and thought they were both insane is they chose to ride with each other in the car. And they rode with me, which, I mean, that's their bad luck. They had to do that. But when they had the chance to drive, their teammate decided they wanted to ride with each other in this thing, which I thought was insane. All the teammates I had in NASCAR, coming to a NASCAR track in a Cup car, I would not have rode with my teammates. So for those guys to do that, I thought was pretty cool. But it was fun. Like I said, the layout of the track, it's a very technical racetrack. It's not just, you know, Watkins Glen's probably the road course that I had the most success at, but it's pretty straightforward about where the line is, what you need to do, braking, this and that. The thing about Circuit of the Americas is that it is very, very technical, and there's a lot of different ways you can attack it. And you know, I just thought it was a lot of fun. But the bumps that you mentioned, for sure, you know, I definitely know what those guys were talking about. We could feel them in the stock car as well, and they were pretty substantial. So I would not discredit what those guys are saying about how bumpy it is there. I mean, the facility is going to have to. I see them having to make some big changes in those areas that have those bumps. They're probably going to have to do a lot of really serious work to fix it. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to drive a Formula One car around there, obviously, but I mean, for the stock car, it was bumpy, much bumpier than Sonoma or Watkins Glen will ever be. And it's just in certain sections of the track. It wasn't, the whole track wasn't that way. 95% or 98% of the racetrack is absolutely smooth as glass and perfect. There's just sections where it seems like the ground underneath the asphalt has settled more, and so it's made the asphalt settle, creating a lot of bumps.
Bob.
Bob Pockers, Fox Sports. How would you assess Daniel Suarez's season, and do you have any idea if he will be back in the 41 next year?
We're working on it. I mean, the thing about Daniel that I love is that he probably studies and works harder than most people I know to be successful at what he's doing, and you know, it's just a matter of trying to you know, get this deal done and see if we can put it all together. But you know, he's working really hard. We're working hard at it. I think we're getting closer, but it's not done yet, obviously.
Jerry in the back, and then Lee.
Jerry Jordan, Kicking the Tires, and had a couple of them. I was at COTA on the outside of the track watching you go around it. They didn't give us credentials. It's a long story.
It's all right. At least at a NASCAR track, I can actually drive in the infield. I had to walk from outside in the parking lot like everybody else. So
Well,
yeah,
there you go.
They can come get me in a car next time.
Going around through the S's and then going into turn 11, What were you were smoking the tires pretty good going through? Was that from braking, or was that from actually getting on it coming off? And what were you talked about the technical aspects? What did you notice about things that would lend themselves, good or bad, to a stock car?
Well, turn one, and obviously that's probably what is most visible to everybody and what everybody remembers about COTA. And you go uphill and it's a big braking, and then you turn and you start a 4-set sequence of right, left S's. But every turn in that sequence of those 8 corners, the radius gets tighter. Each corner gets tighter, 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 and that's what makes it so technical. Because for a heavy stock car, I mean, you have to be precise with your marks, and you do in any kind of race car. But it's a little harder if you miss your mark in a heavier car, and for a track that the corners keep getting tighter as they go through that sequence. I mean, that was what was really fun. A lot of blind over off camber cresting corners, but obviously it's the tire. I think we took the Sonoma tires, what we had, so it may not be the right tire for the track, and obviously we didn't get a chance to really. Basically the setup that we had in there is what we had to run for the whole hour that we were there, so didn't get a chance to really work on the car. But yeah, it was, some of it was braking and some of it was during acceleration as well. But we wanted to make sure that those guys had to get in the F1 cars the next day, and the thing you don't want to do is give them too much rear brake and have them have to worry about wheel hopping and crashing a car and getting dinged up for the next day when they got to get in their full-time job.
And earlier today, you were inducted in the Texas Motor Speedway Hall of Fame. It's been a big year, going to be a continued big year. A lot of pomp and circumstance headed your way. Are you ready for that? It doesn't seem like you're the pomp and circumstance kind of guy. How are you handling it?
Well, too late. It's already been happening. So I don't know whether you're ready for it or not. It's already been going on. But it's very humbling. I mean, it's North Carolina and then Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in January. So 3 of them this year. It's been pretty cool from that standpoint. But it's kind of conflicting at the same time, because to me it's like you think about Hall of Fame stuff after you're done driving, and last night was my 67th race this year. I'm far from retiring, so it just kind of feels like it's chapters that are overlapping in the book. But at the same time, it's a really neat experience. It's humbling. I don't get embarrassed by much of anything, but this stuff kind of embarrasses me for some reason. I don't know why, but it is neat that they're doing it. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Lee and then Dustin.
Lee Spencer, RacingBoys.com. Having driven a McLaren at COTA, I'm kind of curious as to what your experience was going up that first hill, hitting that first turn off of pit road.
The thing that I did notice is, you see it on TV, and normally the camera view is from the top of that hill. The perspective of it isn't even remotely what you see when you drive up the hill. And I think Wolfgang asked it, and I'm not sure I actually totally answered his question. The first time we went down through there, all the teams ran out from the garages and were lined up on the inside of the front stretch wall there, and that was pretty cool. Everybody that had a camera was up there, and all the teams that were, they weren't on track at all on Thursday. So, but to see those guys go, they hear that thing coming down the straightaway, and for those guys to run across like that, you're watching guys running across pit road to watch the car go down there. But it was really cool climbing the hill the first time. It was the perspective doesn't do it justice from the TV view.
And secondly, curious about how the development of the Ford engine has gone with World of Outlaws, and Donnie's facing another championship next weekend. Can you kind of handicap what we're looking at with him going up against Brad Sweet for the title?
I wish I could. I mean, it's I think I'm as nervous as the drivers are, and as Casey is as a car runner too. I mean, they're literally 8 points away from each other. With the way the World Outlaw points are, it's 2 points per position. So we've got 2 races left, and they're literally 4 finishing positions apart at this point. So I can promise you, and having a weekend off this weekend is their weekend off going into it. So they're going to go for 2 whole weeks thinking about what's going to happen next weekend. So I'm sure Brad and Casey and Donnie are nervous. I'm not really that nervous, because it's like we've been through this a million times, know what happens. But but I'm excited. I mean, I think the World Outlaws as a sanctioning body is really happy that it's that close going into the last two races. For us, I mean, getting Donnie in the Ford motor and finally getting a chance for him to run it, it really wasn't necessarily the plan to get it in as early as we did, but we had a problem at Lernerville that got us in the deficit we were, and it kind of opened the door. You know, we basically felt like we didn't really have anything to lose at that point, so we went ahead and decided to make the change and put the Ford in. But we've been extremely happy with it. It's the funny part is we've spent more time trying to figure out how to detune the motor than try to push and get every little bit out of it. We haven't even tried that yet. We literally, the first run on the dyno was better than anything we ever had with any of the other motors. And I'm on a different motor package than Donnie's been on, but both of our motors didn't run as good as this one did. So, but the thing with the World of Outlaws is their qualifying's at a premium. So you need that power for qualifying, but the rest of the day you kind of need to be able to detune the motor and make it more drivable when the track conditions slick off and you don't need quite the same horsepower. So we've spent a lot of time at the chassis dyno at Tim Engler's, you know, working on how to make get more drivability in it, where, you know, when the track conditions change, that the motor's still drivable and easy for him to drive. So, the process has been fun. I mean, we've been able to work with Ford engineers, and the whole process, I don't think you could ask for it to go smoother than what it has went through. It's just a matter of, you know, we're trying to figure out now what do we have to do to make it to where we can help sell that motor for Ford and get more of the Fords out there. So it was getting motors in that we could actually get in a car and start making laps with, and then getting them into Donnie's cars, getting our motor program for next year and getting the number of motors we need to compete next year up, and then figuring out what we need to do for the consumer to get that car ready for market, so, or that motor for market. So it's still in those phases right now, but everything that we've seen from the new Ford motor has been, it's been amazing to watch the process and how painless it's been. You know, knock on wood, it's been painless to this point. So you know, if it keeps going like it's going, this project's been a lot of fun.
Dustin?
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Obviously this week F1 announced the cap cost for teams. NASCAR teams and NASCAR are working on something like that for this series. How much hope do you have in a cap cost for Cup teams, and how much hope do you have that something like that could even be effective at this level?
It could be done. I mean, it's you know, obviously F1 talking about it, and I think NASCAR's talked about it a little bit. I think it's been brought up. I think it would be great for the sport. I mean, you look at how many, I mean, you realistically look at how many teams each week have a chance at running in the top three. There's 2, maybe 3 organizations that have an opportunity to even run in the top 3 every week at an F1 race. IndyCar, it's not quite that bad, and it's not quite that bad again with NASCAR, but you see we've all known the trend in motorsports. I mean, what happens in Formula One trickles down to IndyCar and then used to trickle down to NASCAR. Now you see it in Formula One, and then IndyCar and NASCAR see it at the same time anymore. So I honestly think it's a good thing for the sport. I mean, obviously Gene has a very successful computer automated machine business with Haas Automation, but it would help bring the lower finance teams and make them more competitive if they have if they can cap the budgets for the top teams, and that would close that gap, I think, and make the racing better for everybody. Why should it matter? Do you want to watch the same 4 or 5 guys win races every week? I don't think it's worked so far for F1 necessarily. it's that's the way it's always been. I think why F1 has been successful for so long is just the innovation and technology in the sport. I think that's what's carried it. But, you know, fans of U.S. motorsports are much more picky than, you know, European fans about their racing. They don't, you know, they just love watching the cars go around and watch how fast they are, how loud they are. There's not a lot of actual physical racing. Fans in the U.S. want to see good racing, and their standard of what a good race is versus F1 fans is drastically different. So I think if you can help more under budget teams be more competitive, I think it's better health wise for the sport.
Any other questions for Tony? All right. Oh, yep. Bob?
When I'd asked some others about COTA and being a potential Cup track, I was always told, well, there probably aren't many passing zones. But I want to say you said there were about 4 or 5 passing zones. I mean, do you think that the Cup cars could put on a good show there if taken there?
I think there's 5 and potentially 6 passing zones on that racetrack for Cup cars. I think the area that it would probably be hard on is brakes. I mean, there's 3 really long straightaways that are really heavy braking zones. But aside from that, I mean, there's plenty of passing opportunities. So, if it was, and I've heard, NASCAR, I've heard rumors that NASCAR's looking at potentially more road courses. I think it would be an injustice if they overlooked at least looking at COTA. Then the question is, obviously, you've got COTA here in Texas. You have 2 races here at Texas Motor Speedway. The worst thing they could ever do is take one of the races from Texas Motor Speedway, in my opinion. I think there's other tracks on the circuit that you could take one away, and I think everybody would think it was a reasonable decision. I don't think taking a race from Texas Motor Speedway would be a wise decision at all.
Claire?
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Can you talk about how you think your teams stack up right now in Stewart-Haas Racing and how you look at this weekend?
The hard thing it seems this year is it seems like the needle's kind of been moving all over the place. I mean, it's hasn't been necessarily the year that we're kind of used to seeing with our organization, but the one thing that has been consistent is how everybody at the shop, how hard everybody's working. But it just seems like it's been really hard to find a balance that they all like and find something that seems to be consistent. It just seems like what works one week isn't really working the next week, and seems like the needle's moving around. So I guess from our standpoint, as far as this weekend's concerned, this is a track historically that Kevin runs really well at and likes, so that's a plus. So it's kind of really hard to say at this point, what you really expect till you see how qualifying goes, and just see how they really feel about even qualifying with this package this year. Qualifying isn't really an indication of how the cars are going to race. Everybody kind of picks a downforce package they like and kind of goes with it. So, you might be on the front of qualifying, but it may not drive so well in the race. So, that's where on the weekends that I'm not around the NASCAR tracks, I don't really get too worked up over where the cars qualify, because I know there's agendas on, possibly whether if we don't qualify good, it's like, well, maybe they had more downforce in it, and which equates to more drag, and it's going to be a little slower, but in the race is faster. So you just got to wait and see. I mean, it's hard to predict going into race days what you're going to have. I mean, even days that I've talked to these guys in the morning and they're like, yeah, I'm excited, I'm happy with what we got. They get in the race and all of a sudden they're unhappy really quickly. So it's just weird how it's hard. It's been really hard to be consistent and find something that works everywhere.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.